Good morning. It is Wednesday and we are entering the fourth week of our shelter in place. And just as a reminder, I am doing these cooking classes with my three grandsons. Two of them are 12, Tyven and Caleb, and one is 10, Owan. And I'm hoping that they're enjoying this because it's a break from the studies and it also allows them to serve their family some really delicious things to eat. So today we're embarking on baking. And I know all the boys have experienced cooking cookies, so they already know a little bit about baking. Today we're doing vegan banana bread because everyone wanted to do something sweet this time. And so there's some unique things about baking that I just wanted to point out before we get started. One of the things that's really important with baking is the ratio of the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, because that determines how things come out, how fast it cooks, etc. Now, I know you guys have all made pancakes, so you've seen when you add too much milk, the pancakes come out really thin. If you add too much flour, it comes out kind of heavy and thick. So the same thing applies when you're making something like banana bread. We're doing this vegan to stay very plant-based, consistent with your preferences. So that means we're not using eggs or cow's milk. We're using flaxseed, ground flaxseed meal as a replacement for the eggs, and soy milk. It also has some rolled oats in it, which is very healthy. We're using half whole wheat flour, and we're putting in some walnuts. So all of those things add to the nutrition, and of course the banana, which is also very good. So let's go over the materials and the ingredients. So today we're using what's called a loaf pan. And you can either just grease the pan with a little bit of oil, or, and I've never tried this before, but the recipe said you can line it with parchment paper. So I cut out a piece of parchment paper and put it in the bottom. And what that does is it really helps you when you take the cake out, it doesn't stick to the bottom as easily. So we're kind of experimenting with that. And then we have, of course, our timer. Baking timing is really important. And it's really more of an art than a science, and it requires you to kind of be able to test when something's getting done, if it's getting done too fast, and especially with banana bread, how do you know when it's done inside, so it's not raw in the middle and cooked too much on the outside. So here's our ingredients. Got our measuring spoons, our measuring cups. I've already measured the dry ingredients in here, but I wanted to show you how when you're measuring flour, you want to do it in this kind of a measuring cup as opposed to this kind of a measuring cup. And that's so you can fill it to the top, but take the flat edge of a knife and push the rest of that off so you know you have exactly, in this case, 3/4 of a cup. I've already put in the whole wheat flour. This is white flour. And we've got the oats and the sugar. I chose to use brown sugar, but you can always use white sugar. And I've already put in the baking powder. Important thing about baking powder is that it has a date on the bottom when it's expired. So this says best if used by October 2020. What happens after that is it loses some of its ability to rise your baked good. And then baking soda. And those are the two things that are often used also in pancakes to give some lift. I've started doing the wet ingredients, and I wanted to show you, it says to use really ripe bananas. I had a combination. I had some really ripe bananas in the freezer, but if you have bananas that are really brown like that, that's perfect for banana bread. This one's pretty brown, so this is okay too. What happens is when a banana gets older, its sugars develop. So if you've ever had a really ripe banana, it's really sweet. If you get a banana that's still green, it's not so sweet. So with banana bread, you want it to be sweet. And then the flour, I chose to use whole wheat flour. I had a little bit of pastry flour left, so I used that up, but you can also just use plain all-purpose white flour. You probably don't, if you use 100% whole wheat flour, it'll make it a little bit heavier, a little bit denser. It's still fine. And then I've put in the vanilla, the maple syrup it calls for, our finest, New York, from Chez. I've used canola oil, enriched soy milk, and then some chopped walnuts, which I've already chopped. You want to chop them reasonably fine so that if you're using them, when you put them in, there aren't really big pieces that cause the pieces to break up. So let's finish measuring this. This is mixing it together. I'm putting all of those mashed bananas in there, and the rest of the mashed bananas in there. I didn't have quite enough mashed bananas. I added a tiny bit of yogurt to add a little bit more liquid to make the 1 1/3 cups. And I mix that all together. And then I put in the 1/3 cup of oil. That helps keep the bread moist. So that's all the wet ingredients. And then I'm going to mix the dry ingredients. And because I used brown sugar, it's a little bit lumpy, so I'm going to mix this up together first. If you're using white sugar or coconut sugar, it's probably not lumpy like this. And we'll see how this comes out. I don't know if I'll get a chance to, I'll probably get a chance to taste this before you guys cook this, and I can let you know if it's sweet, how sweet it is. Okay, so now we're going to add this to the wet ingredients. Try and get these lumps out. I didn't realize my brown sugar is a little lumpy. We don't, as you know, we don't use that much sugar in our household, so the brown sugar sometimes gets a little lumpy. You gotta push the lumps out. Okay, so now we're going to combine the two, and hopefully we have the right amount of wet to dry. We shall see. Starting to look like cake batter, isn't it? And one thing when you're baking, you don't want to over mix, but you want to make sure that there's no dry spots of flour in there. So you just mix it so you don't see too much of that anymore. So I think that's pretty much done. So then we are going to pour it in the pan. Get as much as you can out of there. And of course, since we haven't put an egg in there, you can always taste it. Make sure it's going to taste good. And let's see, now I forgot to put the nuts in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little and put them on top. We'll see how that works. We'll have a nice crunchy top with the walnuts. And I think it's looking pretty good already. Now we're going to pop it in the oven, but first we're going to set our timer. I'm going to set it for 40 minutes. So we're going to put it in the oven, and the timer is set for 40 minutes. This is a cooling rack. And when we take it out, if you have one of these, you're going to set this on the cooling rack for about 30 minutes before you do anything else, before you try and take it out of the pan. And also, just to tell you how to test it, oh, our sous chef has come in. Come on, sous chef, come here. Come here, sous chef. Oh, there she is. She's not going to join us today, but she's over there. She wants to get in the act. She was feeling left out. Anyway, we will resume when we have taken it out of the oven, and we'll talk a little bit about how to make sure it's done. Okay.